Good evening tonight from Lviv, Ukraine. We begin with breaking news, potentially ominous news. This is closed-circuit video of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia in southern Ukraine. Now, it is the largest in the country with 6 nuclear reactors. It's been under attack for several days from Russian attacks, and now it is said to be on fire. It is burning. Firefighters reportedly cannot battle the blaze. These are live images you're seeing because of the continued shooting. Ukraine's foreign minister tweeting this just a moment ago, and I'm quoting directly now from Ukraine's foreign minister, quote, Russian army is firing from all sides upon Zaporizhia NPP, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Fire has already broken out. If it blows up, it will be 10 times larger than Chernobyl. Russians must immediately cease the fire, allow firefighters, establish a security zone, exclamation mark. Right now, I want to go to a nuclear policy expert, Graham Allison from Harvard's Belfer Center. Graham, could you give us a sense, how concerned should everyone be about the situation at this very large nuclear power plant?
Well, the facts are unfolding as we, sit here, but I would say in general, very concerned. We should remember Chernobyl in '86 was the meltdown that spewed radioactive material all over Western Europe. And so it's conceivable that one could have another version of that. I hope not. I pray not. But things could be worse.
The images we're seeing, it's very obviously, it's the middle of the night. It's hard to see. We've zoomed in on what appears to be the fire. We're told firefighters can't fight it because of ongoing attacks. Is a fire at a nuclear power plant, I mean, it doesn't sound good, but are there systems within a plant to automatically fight a fire?
Well, yes, but not all fires. And not all fires in a power plant have catastrophic consequences. We can remember what happened at Fukushima. The issues really go to whether the fire may be in the cooling pits, because there you have material that's particularly radioactive, or if ultimately a fire could cause a meltdown of the reactor. And in that case, you would have a huge release of radioactivity. And as I say, the radioactivity that was released in '86 from the Chernobyl crisis or tragedy, spread all over, I mean, not just Ukraine, but all over Western Europe and into Russia as well. So the Russians understand the risks that are associated with a nuclear power plant. The Ukrainian professionals do too. So I'm sure they're both, working to try to avoid the worst. But nuclear power plants are dangerous.
Now, assuming again, the statement from the Ukrainian foreign minister is really describing what is going on. We don't have eyes on the ground there. We can't confirm exactly what is going on. Again, we're basing our reporting off what we're being told by Ukrainian authorities here, obviously. But of all the things what are the things we need to know specifically in order to determine, just for the hours ahead for our viewers, what information do we need to know specifically about this fire, about its location, et cetera, in order to determine how serious this may be?
Well, a good question. I wish I had a good answer. I would say that there's so many uncertainties surrounding it. But if I were doing my checklist, in first instance, where is the fire? And secondly, who's in control of the power plant? It was reported that Russians had taken control because of their concern about these risks. But is there fighting that gave rise to the fire? Or, how did this come about? And then thirdly, uh, what about the people who are trying to manage or put out the fire, given particularly the difficulties at night and with the uncertainties around it? And if there's fighting going on around Chernobyl, around this facility, which I can't tell from the information that's available, then obviously having firefighters go try to deal with a fire in the midst of gunfire, not a very good idea. But we should remember, as I say, If we go back to 1986, there was a terrible crisis at Chernobyl. It released a huge amount of radioactivity. It actually changed the weather and the growing patterns all over a great swath of Russia, Ukraine, and much of Western Europe. So, uh, nuclear power plants, in principle, it contain enough material such that if there's a fire in the cooling facilities, that can release a lot of very dangerous radioactivity. And if there's a meltdown at the reactor, that can produce a huge release of radioactivity. And God knows there's enough problems in Ukraine without uh, a nuclear catastrophe on top of it.
How and again, this may, I don't know if you know this, but how hardened are the reactors themselves, the the structures that contain nuclear material? How hardened are they to something like a rocket strike, or to incoming potential collisions with anything coming into them?
Well, that's a question I did look at when I was looking at writing a book on nuclear terrorism. And nuclear reactors, let's take ones here in the US, but also the one at Chernobyl, are not designed against attacks by advanced weapons. So even if an aircraft, an airliner, were to crash into a reactor like the one at Indian Point in New York, for example, I looked at that in some detail. You could have a great release of radioactivity. So if rockets were targeting a nuclear reactor, then I think they could quite successfully, uh, you know, create a huge fire that could conceivably produce a large release. But I have not seen any evidence of the attacks that produce the fire. Maybe that's what happened, but again, it's I think a little hard to tell at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it would be obviously ideal for Ukrainian authorities, who apparently still are in control of this plant or still on site at this plant. If there are Ukrainian firefighters there, if there must be Ukrainian authorities there, you would think, just out of a sense of responsibility to the global community, getting as much information out as quickly as possible, and not causing hysteria, would be a good idea. Trying to get as much information right now into people's hands about what it was, the cause of this fire at the very least, and where the fire is located. Those seem to be basic questions that we still need
I
to be answered.
I agree, and I think the other thing is the the level of professionalism in both the Ukrainian uh, nuclear community that deals with their reactor and in the Russian community, I'd say, has been impressive. And so I think if it were up to the professionals who are trying to manage a nuclear power production facility, I would have a higher level of confidence. If this has gotten caught up in the warfare between Russia and Ukraine, then God only knows, because no, almost no normal systems, no normal parts of our lives are hardened against serious military attack. That's just not one of the things that normal people prepare for most of the time.
Mm. I should point out to our viewers, these images are coming from closed circuit monitors. We are not in control of these images. These are being provided by authorities at the facility. So it's not only, that's why there's low quality to it, because it's a closed circuit camera, but also you see the images changing. And again, that's not something we have control over, but it appears that fire, this is video now from earlier of the fire, which you can see there, sort of in the middle to the right of that taller structure. They're saying that this is also the firefight, that those streaks across there, which look almost like snow, are actually tracer fire during a firefight at the facility. So What's interesting about this is that it apparently, and again, we don't know if have been rockets or missiles in this area, but I mean that would appear to be tracer fire of relatively large caliber weapons. So it looks like more of a ground fight, at least at this time on this camera.
I can't, from the pictures, really, interpret what's going on in the detail. But I'm sure that as the night goes on, we'll learn more.